Hi everyone and welcome along to part 2 of our Christmas pot kit tutorial. This is our second collection for the end of the year of pot kits. We're still focusing really heavily on hellebores. You've all loved them so much, so they all completely sold out for the first collection in November. So we've added them back in for December. We've got a new trio for you and another little hellebore kit as well. We've also got some beautiful white amaryllis bulbs in 2 different pot kits for that. And then we have a new little Christmas tree kit, which is just one size up from the mini Christmas tree, which again sold out last month, but we've brought back with a slightly different pot, but that's on the previous tutorial. So yes, we've added a sort of a little Christmas tree, again perfect for styling shelves and alcoves, and we know a lot of you have bought them for your children as well to decorate. So that's coming for this December collection as well. So yeah, as always, we've got all of the bits to put them together. I will take you through step by step, let you know how to look after everything, and let's begin. So the first pot kit I'm going to show you is the Hellebore Trio kit. So last month we had a slightly different pot with our Hellebore Trio kits. They sold out so quickly, so we've bought a new one back for this month. And we are introducing a brand new Bergs Potter terracotta pot that we've never used before. And we have 3 of these in these kits. So they are beautiful layered terracotta with a really lovely matching saucer. So in this kit you get 3 of these. You also get 3 of the white hellebores in their gorgeous little red pots. You get your compost, your moss and your gravel, and your dry thyme and your birch twigs as well. So everything you need to put your kit together. So I will show you now how to pot them up and then give you some tips and pointers on how to look after them. So in your kit you'll have your gravel, and that's what we use first. So pop your pots onto the saucers and then add in just a little bit of gravel. It really doesn't need a lot. It's just to provide a tiny bit of drainage. So just a sprinkling of the gravel, and then take your plants out of their pots. Now actually this is optional. If you want to, you can pot the actual plastic pot in the terracotta pot and then just cover with the moss if you want to, with the idea that then it's easier in theory to then take them into the garden and plant them when you want to pot something else. I'll show you how to pot them up. What I'll do is I'll show you how to pot one up out of the pot, and then the other 2 I'll leave in the red pots so you can see the difference and you can choose which way you want to do it. So gently take your plant out of its pot and just simply place in the middle. And then take some of your compost and fill in the gaps around the edge. You don't need a lot at all, but the benefits of adding the compost in, obviously it fills the space, but it's fresh compost. It's a really, really good quality compost. And you'll find that the plant still needs the nutrients, even though it's already obviously in compost, but it probably would have exhausted quite a lot of those nutrients already. Okay, so that's one that I've done, planted properly in compost. The other 2, I'm simply going to put in the pots. If you find that the red pot is too high, you can, if you want to, just remove the gravel, because the little sort of feet that the pots, that the plant is in, if that makes sense, means that it's not going to sit in water anyway. So that's the purpose of the gravel. So just pop your little red, I say red, they also come in black, so you might have red or black, plant just directly into the terracotta pot. I would then add your compost in, but I would just put a little bit on the top. Again, it doesn't matter if this spills over into the main part of the pot. But the purpose for that is that it's just getting a little bit of a refresh of nutrients from the brand new compost, just in case it's exhausted all of the nutrients in the existing compost that it's been planted in. So just a tiny little bit of compost there, and then we can go in with the moss. So if I show you the first one where I've planted it. So this is the sphagnum moss, and then we've got the bun moss, and then I think I've also had some flat moss in the workshop that I think I probably have included in your orders. So there's 3 different types of moss this time. What you'll find with the carpet moss is that because it's quite thin, it doesn't have really sort of thick chunky root structure. It is perfect for pot kits like this. It's just a little bit easier to use. So that's one with the 3 mosses there. And then if I show you how to do the other 2. So it's just a case of covering your pot. So tucking it down the sides. You can break the root structure off your bun moss, which is that kind of chunkier green moss. And just tucking it in and hiding the red or black pot. Okay, that's all hidden. And you'll see that you can't really tell the difference. The only difference I'd say is that this one is just slightly more sort of raised, almost sort of tiny bit domed at the top. I'll pop that there so you can see a bit better. And then for the last one again, just adding in the moss to cover up the pot. Some bun moss. And some flat moss. Okay, so that's them potted up with their 3 different varieties of moss. And then you can start adding in your twigs and dried thyme. So you have 2 different types. You have your dried thyme twigs and your birch twigs, which are the browner variety. Now again, just break your twigs down into the lengths that you'd like them to be. I don't like them to be too tall. I prefer them to be quite subtle. So that just goes in like that. I also don't like to use too much. I want the hellebores to be sort of the main event. You don't need to use secateurs if you don't want to. You can really easily just break these off, with your fingers. She says. There we go. Okay, so that's one complete. So birch twigs. Dried thyme. So these pots and this trio is perfect for a Christmas tablescape, as well as, just your normal everyday styling in your home if you want them on a table or on a bookshelf or on a windowsill. But again, I love the idea of using it for, Christmas Day, down the centre of the table. It's effective in that because they're sort of smaller, and obviously on Christmas Day, lots of things on the table. You can manoeuvre them, find them a space, You know, it's not one sort of big arrangement. So a really nice Christmas Day kit. Okay, and there we have it. So they're all potted up. So I'm just going to give you now some tips on how to look after them. So with hellebores, they are in theory an outdoor plant, but they can be grown and thrive indoors. So the best tip to give you is if they look droopy, they're thirsty, so give them water and you'll find that they'll just go whoop, straight back up. If you find that the leaves are turning, just snip them off, because as with an outdoor plant you can prune them, so snip off any dried sort of leaves that might be changing colour. And that is the same with the flowers. So once the flowers have you know, bloomed and then they've gone over, just snip them off, and then the little buds that sometimes are under the soil, so you might not see them, they will then come up in their place. So I will show you now. So I thought this might be a helpful exercise. So this is a little hellebore pot kit that I've had in my kitchen for about 6 weeks, possibly. Now, I neglected it when I was busy a couple of weeks ago, and it all just went, it gave up completely. And the leaves started to go a bit yellow, and I thought, oh, I've killed it. Anyway, I gave it a really good drink and it all came back up again. But the leaves were still yellow in theory, a lot of them were. So I snipped them off. I also deadheaded all the flowers. So where you take a deadhead is just where it starts to meet a set of leaves. So you just snip. I'm trying to see if I can find one. So for example, this one here, that can be snipped now because it's starting to look a bit tired. With this one, it's got no sort of leaves with a new bud. So I would take this right down to the bottom and literally just snip it off and then chuck that. I've left one leaf on there for you as well to show you. So with the leaf, I would take that all the way down to the bottom, making sure that you're not disturbing or knocking or cutting any of the teeny buds that I can see in there, because obviously they're going to replace the dead-headed flowers that you've taken off. So just snip your leaves and you'll deadhead your flowers, and then you'll find that you get new buds starting to rise up. So for example here, these were all down here when I first deadheaded. They've now grown obviously, and now there are also some really tiny little buds taking their place. So you can definitely revive your hellebore if you neglect it and forget to water it, or for whatever reason, or if you go away for a few days. So just treat it like you would a garden plant indoors. So give it a cut back, deadhead the flowers, cut off any leaves that are past their best, and it will all start to rejuvenate, and you'll get all those beautiful buds that are under the soil starting to come up the plant. Okay, so hopefully that gives you some good tips in terms of watering every couple of days. I thought that they wouldn't need as much water as mine actually has. Mine is on a usually set on my windowsill. It's not a particularly warm room, but we do have underfloor heating, so maybe that's why it's quite hot. So I probably am watering every 2 days, hence why they killed over when I didn't. So keep them nice and damp, not overwatered, deadhead as and when, take off any leaves that you need to, and hopefully you'll really enjoy this little hellebore trio kit. So the next kit we're going to make is the little hellebore kit. Again, this was a sellout last month, so we brought it back this month in a slightly different pot. So for December, we've got the 14cm Castle terracotta pot. This is my own personal pot that I have at home, and as you can probably tell, it's a bit sort of weather worn, and I've watered whatever was in it before, and it's got beautiful like watermarks all over it, so they really do age so beautifully. I think they just get better the older they get. So in your kit, if you have ordered a little hellebore kit, you will have your pot, your gravel, your moss, your compost, your twigs, and your hellebore plant as well, of course, this white hellebore. So if we add in the gravel first, so pop your pot on its saucer, add in the gravel. I would use probably most of the gravel, if not all of it, that you have in your kit. And then take your plant gently, being careful of all the tiny buds around the base of the plant, and pop that straight in. Now, as you'll see, it's quite a nice fit in the 14 centimetre pot. So then start adding in your compost just around the sides, just to fill in that space and to add some nutrients back into the plant. And then push down to remove any airlocks, being careful again of the tiny buds that usually form just under the soil. Okay. And then we can start adding the moss. So you'll have 3 different types. You'll have your bun moss, which is this type of moss. You'll have your sphagnum moss, which is this kind of moss, and some flat moss, which is more kind of like that. So you just go in with your mosses. You can mix them up, put them in different places and just fill in the gaps. Again, just being mindful of the tiny buds that are under the surface of your plant. There we go. So when watering, please make sure that you're watering your plant and not your moss. So make sure that the water gets through into the soil. Okay, and now we can add in our twigs and dried thyme. So again, just little touches of the twigs and thyme, just to add some texture. And as I've just mentioned in the trio pot kits just now, when you find that your flowers have gone over, you can deadhead them. If you see, like here, you've got your flower here and then a set of leaves just forming there. Now within that set of leaves there will be somewhere a teeny tiny bud. Cut just where the set of leaves are, being careful not to nip the bud, and then just throw that flower head away, and then the new bud will form and bloom and replace that previous flower. And the same with leaves. So for example here, this leaf here is looking a little bit yellow, so I'm just going to snip that off. Okay, just adding in a tiny bit more dried thyme. Some more birch twigs. And there we have it. So that is your little hellebore pocket. So moving on to the last of our hellebore pockets for the year, and that is the layered hellebore kit. So in this pocket you will have a beautiful 16 centimetre satin Berg's Potter pot, which consists of these beautiful layers and matching saucer. It's one of my favourites, it's a really lovely size. And then you will also have your Valeria hellebore as well, which is just the most beautiful, dusky, sort of white, green, mauve, burgundy coloured plant. And as you can probably see, all of these tiny buds are forming around the base. So in your kit you will also have your gravel. So once you've got your pot on your saucer, you just add in some gravel at the bottom, just a little bit to act as drainage. And it's a 16 centimetre pot and a 15 centimetre plant. So in theory it should sit quite snug, but I have found, actually I'll do it this way, I have found it quite tricky to get in at first. Oh, that one seems easier for some reason. So you just pop it in and then push it down, and you'll probably find that you don't need any compost. I would recommend though just adding a tiny bit in, just a sort of a top layer almost of compost, just a couple of handfuls, just to act as a sort of almost like a top layer of nutrients. So then when you water your plant, all those nutrients from that new fresh compost will drip down into the root system and really, really benefit the plant. So there you have it with the compost on the top, and then all that's left to add now is the moss. So in your kit you'll have 3 different types of moss. You'll have carpet moss or flat moss, which is this kind. Then you'll have your sphagnum moss, which is the more sort of loose textured moss, and then your bun moss, which is the more sort of compact green moss. Now with this kit, I personally would say that you're better off using the flat moss and the sphagnum moss, mainly because you don't have a big sort of depth of space at the top of the plant, at the top of the pot to add your bun moss. So you will find in your kit you'll have plenty of flat and sphagnum moss to add, and then hopefully you can find a home for the bun moss. But just adding that in. Obviously if you want to use the bun moss, I would just break off the root system so that you're left with it quite sort of not too deep, and then you can add it on. You'll find that it will sort of break up into these lovely little kind of, I don't know what they are, they're just lovely. It will break up and then it will be a little bit more, bit easier, sorry, to move and position. Okay, and there you have it. So just giving you some tips on how to look after it. If it's looking droopy, it definitely needs a drink, so give it some water. I would say you need to be watering it every 2 days, but if it's drooping, more regularly than that. You can deadhead any of the flowers that have gone over, and I'll show you how to do one here. So, not that any of them need it, but for example, this one at the front, it's on quite a chunky stem with 1, 2, like about 3 or 4 floral heads. So I'm just going to take the main one off, where it meets the other stem, there, like that. That's all you have to do. And then the bud that's lower down will bloom in its place. For the leaves, you can definitely trim as if you want to. They're quite robust, these leaves. So if you feel like you want your plant to be a little bit more upright, you can absolutely take them off. So if, say for example, I take this one off, just take it off near the bottom of the plant, being careful of the tiny buds, and then just discard it, and that's absolutely fine to do that. When you feel like it's exhausted all of the nutrients in the compost, or if you want to pot up something different in your pot, this hellebore, as with the other hellebores, they also do really well in the garden. So, you know, pot it in the garden, and then you can enjoy it next year outside. So we're now going to move on to the first of our amaryllis pot kits. So this is the single bulb pot kit, and comes in this gorgeous tall 14cm bird's potter pot with this lovely sort of scallop detail around the top. This is my own personal one from home, so it again is quite sort of weather beaten and worn, and it has lots of lovely tide marks, watermarks on it. And again, as I said before, with one of the other pots, it gets even more beautiful the older it gets. So hopefully you can see how your pot will look after a few different plants have been in it. So this kit is obviously features the white amaryllis, and I created this pot kit with the idea that I wanted to focus more on the bulb than the actual bloom of the amaryllis, mainly because I just think when you have a pot kit or a bulb planted up, they just look stunning and really beautiful, and I think they're sort of quite whimsical and just they feel festive with all the other elements that we add to it. That's not to say that amaryllis, when it blooms, isn't absolutely stunning, because obviously it is. And it's a real kind of traditional Christmas, New Year plant to have, or flower to have in the house. Your bulbs will, of course, if they're looked after, bloom eventually. But I wanted to kind of stress that I can't promise you when they're going to bloom. It all depends on, you know, the temperature of your house and how often you water it, how much sunlight they get. So yeah, this is definitely one where I'm focusing on the bulb and how that looks aesthetically, and when it blooms later on, that's just a bonus. So that is what this kit is all about. This is just a amaryllis bulb I planted up just for my own personal kind of to have at home in one of the pots that the Hellebore Trio come in. So I planted this 3 weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago. It looked like this when I planted it. So as you can see, they grow quite slowly. So you do get to enjoy that sort of bulb moment with this pot kit, which I think is really important. So this is your pot. You will get your gravel in your kit. So let's add in the gravel. You can put in all of it. It gives good drainage. So put all the gravel that's in your kit into the bottom of the pot with this pot sat on a saucer. And then you can add in your compost. Now you're probably going to need to use all of your compost in your kit. You will be given a decent amount. So worth mentioning here that I designed the kit with the idea that you can see the bulb. So that you can see it just around the rim of the pot. If you find that it started to bloom, and depending again on the climate in your house, and I don't know how it's going, how you've looked after it, you might find it starts to go a little bit unsteady and a bit unsupported. There's two things you can do. You can either, so if you imagine you've got your bulb, your amaryllis has grown, and you've got your really lovely big blousy flower head at the top. You can either, it might be fine, you know, I've had amaryllis that are really strong, haven't needed support, and I just cut them down when they've gone over and actually still just keep the bulb in the pot. If you find that it's a bit wobbly, a bit sort of unstable, you can do one of two things. You can either use something to support it, whether that's a cane, or, you know, I'm just looking outside into my garden now and I've got some hydrangea out there that are obviously gone now. You could cut a stem of hydrangea, take the head off and use that as a support, and just tie the stem of the amaryllis around the support with some string or some, what else could you use? Some kind of twine or something like that. The other option is you take your bulb out. Don't worry about the roots, they're fine, like coming out of the soil. You take some of the compost out, and then you then plant your bulb again lower down. So that way it has the pot as almost a bit of support, and you would then also kind of layer up the compost. So then the compost would then support the stem, if that makes sense. So either way is absolutely fine. Or you might find that your stem is really sturdy and you don't need to support it at all. Okay, so after you've added in the compost, I'm then going to pop in the compost that's in the pot after taking the bulb out. And then simply, I sort of imagine it like a screw. Pop the root system on top of the soil and then just twist. Nothing really happens, it's just purely that then the root system just sort of tucks underneath the bulb like a little nest, and then the bulb, as you can see, just sits there really nicely. And that's all you do. You can then, if you have any left, add in a tiny bit of compost around the top, like that. And then you can add in your moss. So in your kit you'll have your sphagnum moss, which is the loose textured moss. You'll have some flat or carpet moss, which is the slightly sort of thin green one. And then your bun moss, which is the more, if I can find a sort of kind of chunkier moss, if you will. So just start adding in your moss around the base. I like carpet moss in this because you can kind of build it up almost so that it starts to sit, and the same with the sphagnum actually, sit sort of really close to the top of the bulb, and then you see that lovely brown kind of papery layer of the actual bulb just sort of popping through. This is one of my favourite pockets. And there we go, so that's all the moss in. So you'll see all the different types there. And now the next stage is adding in the twigs and the thyme. So when I thought up this pocket, I thought in my head I wanted it to look sort of quite sort of woodlandy and quite whimsical and very sort of organic in how it looks in its aesthetics. So I personally like to cut the thyme and the twigs quite short and almost lay them if you can. So if I go in with the thyme and the birch twigs there, but then if, say for example, you have a nice little cluster of thyme there, I would then lay that on top of the moss. So it's creating more of a sort of carpet of texture over the top of the moss that you've put down, as well as surrounding the actual bulb itself. So again, sun facing up. And then other bits just laying over the moss. So you're creating a sort of really textured pocket. And there you have it. So in terms of upkeep and looking after this one with the amaryllis, I would suggest watering every maybe sort of 3 to 4 days, 5 days maybe. Keeping it cool, but it doesn't need to be, you know, away from a windowsill or anything. That's where this one has been. It's been in my kitchen window. I water it probably every 3 or 4 days, and it's just, yeah, just started to bloom, well, to sprout, I suppose is the word. And that's about it. Really, really easy to look after and enjoy at this stage. And then when it blooms, have a think about how you want to support it, either with a cane or with, you know, a twig from the garden even, to keep in with that sort of rustic feel. Or you can lower the bulb down near the bottom of the pot, take the compost out, put it further down, and then you will then have the actual pot as a bit more of a support. Completely up to you, whichever you prefer. And there you have it too. That's your single amaryllis pocket. So your next amaryllis pocket is the cluster pocket, which consists of 3 white amaryllis bulbs and this gorgeous Simona 16cm pot with all of its beautiful rib detailing and beautiful sort of bobbling around the top and on its matching saucer. It's a really, really pretty pocket. So much like with the previous one we've just done, which was the single amaryllis pocket, it's the same sort of theory and sort of ideas behind it, in that I wanted to focus on the bulb rather than the flower of the amaryllis, with the idea that the flower is just a bonus at the end, rather than the sort of the main event. So for me, the main event is watching them grow, enjoying how they look at this stage, which I think is just equally beautiful to the actual white flower that blooms. So that was the idea of this pocket. So in your pocket, you will have your gravel and your compost and your moss, your 3 amaryllis bulbs, and of course your pot. So adding in your gravel, to the bottom, and again you can use all of your gravel to give it some really good drainage, and then we'll go in with the compost. Now I think I'll probably need most of this, so I'm just going to add it all in. So pushing that down, there we go. You will also be adding in the compost from your bulb pots as well. So adding in your bulbs, take the bulb out, add in the compost, and then just sort of juice that compost down, and then screw the bulb in. So just twist it as if you're screwing it in. There we go. So that's the first one. I've done that at the back. So again, adding the bulb compost that's in the pot. Shim it down a bit, and then popping the roots directly on top. Oh, screw the other way, and then screwing it down like that. Ooh, adding in the compost, and then again popping the roots straight directly on top. Whoops. And then screwing it down. So there you have your 3 bulbs planted, and you might find that they're at slightly different bloom stage. They're all the same age, but this one seems to have sprouted a bit quicker than these 2. But again, in my opinion, just adds to that interest. Okay, so now we can add in the moss. So we have some sphagnum moss, your carpet moss, and your bun moss. So just adding into the gaps, through the middle, allowing it to sort of just come up around the bulb. I take the root system off the bun moss just to kind of find it easier to place when I do that. That's all mossed up now, and it's lovely because you can still see that papery brown sort of shell of the bulb, but it's slightly sort of hidden and nestled amongst all that moss. So now we're going to add in the thyme and the birch twigs that we have in your kit. So again, much like the one before, the kit I've just potted up, I wouldn't have the twigs particularly high. I'd have them kind of around the same height, but just sort of nestled in amongst the bulbs. So not too tall. I mean, obviously it's completely up to you how you want it to look, but that's just my personal opinion in terms of, I just want them to be subtle touches and not sort of take over from the 3 beautiful bulbs that are sort of sat there. And then with the thyme, the dry thyme, and much like I did with the other pot kit, I want it to create a sort of textured carpet on the bottom. So I don't necessarily want that height, I just want the texture around the bulbs, just to add that sort of woodlandy, whimsical interest. Okay, I think that's enough. So that's it. So in terms of looking after your bulb kits, I would say water maybe every 3 days, see how they go, see sort of how hot the room they're in is. Every 3, 4, 5 days, give them a nice water. Keep them reasonably cool, but again, they're not particularly sensitive. You'll find that if it's a warmer room, they will grow quicker. So if you really want to sort of speed up the blooming process, then maybe keep them warm, but definitely keep them well watered if that's the case. When they bloom, they might need some support. So as I was saying on the previous pocket, you can use just some twigs from the garden, just pop it into the compost and then just tie with twine or some string so that they've got some support. But for me, it's more about the bulb than the flower at the end. But hopefully you might get some beautiful white flowers around New Year, which is just what makes it such a special kind of Christmas pot kit, really. So there you have it. That's your trio cluster bulb kit. So we are now onto our final pot kit for the year, which is the little Christmas tree kit. So this is sort of in between the size of the mini Christmas tree and the small Christmas tree. It's a really lovely size, just that slightly bit bigger than the mini, so it's a little bit more substantial. Really lovely to decorate with some sort of really delicate little decorations if you want to, or keep completely sort of bare and go for that sort of rustic look. So this comes in a 16cm scalloped castle pot from Bergs Potter. This is again my own, relatively new, but you'll see it's got some lovely watermarks on it from where I've potted something up in it previously. So in your kit you'll have your gravel, so that needs to go in first. So add all of that in, and then these are so simple to pot. You just simply take them out and pop them in. Obviously if you want to, you can actually put the plastic pot directly into the terracotta pot, with the idea that then if it's possibly easier to then plant it in the garden if you'd like to, once the festivities are over. So then adding in your compost around the edges, just to give it some nice new nutrients. There we go. These are so easy to look after and don't need too much attention. And then adding on top of the compost your moss. So you'll have your sphagnum moss, which is the loose textured moss. You'll have your carpet moss or flat moss, and then obviously your bun moss. But again, with the Christmas trees, I would say I would probably use more of the flat moss and the sphagnum moss, just because it takes it up to the top of the pot. But you just use whatever it is you fancy. You'll have all three, so you'll have your own pick of whatever moss you'd like to use. And that is it. In terms of looking after it, I would say water every sort of maybe once a week, and just to keep it fresh looking, and that's about it. There is nothing else you have to do. If come January you want to pot it in your garden, just plant it up or pop it in a pot outside, and it will be there for next year if you look after it. And that's about it. It makes a beautiful gift for if you're visiting friends. It also makes a lovely tablescape if you want to do sort of a variety of different things with trees and plants and flowers for Christmas Day. That looks lovely. It also looks really pretty on a bookcase or a bookshelf or an alcove, or just in a child's bedroom or wherever, in a bathroom. It's just a really versatile kit, one of my favourites, and yes, so I hope you enjoy it. So that's it for our December pot kits and for our year of pot kits. Thank you so much for all of your incredible orders and your support and your repeat orders and your comments and lovely messages. It just means so much to me, and I'm just so overjoyed that you're on board with our concepts of having these pot kits at home, enjoying plants, enjoying the pots, and enjoying just that process of potting up and that little bit of relaxation and a spot of creativity. So it means everything, so thank you so much. We will be back in January with our New Year pot kits, so I'm so excited about those. We've already got them in mind, and we're designing them, and we're got new pots for those as well, so I really look forward to showing you those in the new year. So they will be available to order on the 1st of January. So, wishing you a very Merry Christmas, have a lovely, lovely festive time, and take care of yourself.